Sick Harrison Price for Wednesday, June 11th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. And this show, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sakaris back with Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. Welcome home. How was your Toronto experience?
Toronto's still Toronto. Still the same.
Or should I ask, how was your Pearson experience?
Oh, Pearson was...
Oh, boy.
Stay away. Stay away.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a fun few days. The weekend games were quite good. Last night was not super easy to watch.
No, I watched the first half. It was by no means the same first half as against the Ukraine Saturday, which was dazzling.
And it devolved from there, actually.
Right. And full disclosure, Blake had some travel trouble this morning. And so
I made it, though.
Yeah, he made it for this segment. Yeah. Our next two segments were recorded earlier. And Blake does not feature. But I do later in this block want your take on what we saw and what we heard from the Canadian men's national team as they get set to come here to Vancouver Tuesday for the big Gold Cup opener against Honduras. More on that later in the program. Let's start with our Toyota Pacific Dealers poll question. Is there any part of you that thinks the Canucks should just trade Quinn Hughes this summer? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Sick Harrison Price X and YouTube channels. Quinn Hughes, some news around Quinn Hughes today. We will get to it in a moment in our top story with regards to the Norris Trophy. And another podium finish, but not a defense of his title. But, and we'll talk about this a little later with Frank Corrado, we went into this summer, went into this offseason, talking about the Vancouver Canucks and must land a top two center. Rutherford saying it's be more expensive not to, going to be expensive, probably going to have to be via trade. Not to mention Rutherford saying he wanted to add a couple of more forwards. And then as seasons have ended across the NHL, and particularly with the 14 playoff clubs that have now been eliminated, more and more the picture started coming into focus that you have all these contending teams that think themselves a piece or two away, that want to get aggressive this summer, and particularly with the cap going up, having more cap space. You have these mid-pack teams, these playoff teams or fringe playoff teams that are looking to do the same. So many of them, we've heard from the individual reports in markets, are looking for that top two center. And then we started asking ourselves the question, okay, who are the sellers here? Like, who are putting these sorts of pieces in place, either in futures deals or in good old-fashioned hockey trades? And it's become more and more difficult to pinpoint where all these contenders, playoff teams, and clubs like the Canucks, who are hoping to rebound from a poor season, are going to get these pieces. Even Boston, we'll talk about Boston a little bit later, but we wondered, okay, like are the Bruins ready to rebuild here coming off a poor season? And, with what they did at the deadline, well, it doesn't appear to be the case. Teams that have been out of the playoffs, Philadelphia, Anaheim, are looking to take the next step. Not even like the dregs of the league. San Jose and Chicago are willing to be as bad as they have been over the last few years. Even with Gavin McKenna at the end of the rainbow in extra.
Where are you going with this?
The question, if you're one of the few sellers this summer, Blake, like the market, will it ever be flusher than it is this summer?
Okay, but the definition of seller is in the eye of the beholder. Like, there's a lot of teams that have a lot of guys on the market, but the difference is this year versus all the rest is all those teams that have a guy that they are willing to move want a guy back.
That's it.
That's the problem.
That's it.
But as it pertains to the Canucks and Quinn Hughes, that would be the case with them too. This is not liquidation for prospects and picks. If they
no. Nobody is suggesting that. But of course, Quinn Hughes is such a piece that of course it's ready-made players coming back, right?
For sure.
Like with all due respect, this isn't Nick Hague or
many others.
Pavel Zacha or something like that, where, maybe the team just wants the money off the books and is willing to take prospects picks. No. Now, I voted yes on the poll, and here's why. So much of keeping him beyond this contract, I think, rides on having a damn near perfect offseason and then everything falling into place next season, much like we saw 2 years ago. He's worth more now than he would be next summer. And again, this might be the flushest market you're going to get in terms of selling. Mm-hmm. I would, of course, hate to see him leave. He's an absolute joy to watch each and every night. And I would hate to have to be in Jim Rutherford or Patrick Allvin's shoes and having to stick handle this issue going forward. But I think you have to gauge the market and have the conversation. I think you need to start prepping to see what lengths, and I do think some teams would be willing to go to mighty lengths. What lengths are some teams willing to go to get a player like Quinn Hughes?
Knowing that it might be a 2-year rental for them too, right?
Right.
So it's not the perfect give us all your good stuff trade, because that's hanging over the acquiring team's head. That really, if the Canucks are selling this guy because they are so afraid that he is hell or high water going to play with his brothers, then the same rule applies to the acquiring team. So it's a Kawhi Leonard plus deal, basically. Hired gun for 2 years instead of 1. And yeah, you're going to get some good pieces back. But it's not necessarily the Kings' ransom of another even flight deal. Only the Vancouver Canucks, and maybe only Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, really know what was behind Jim Rutherford making that comment from the get-go. Only they know the true depths of their fears. It was certainly, no one's disputing, there was truth infused into that comment. Was there some level of humor in there? Yep, that's a percentage point too. What that cocktail percentage is, only they know. Like, it may have been micro percentage points for one or the other. We just don't know which is which. And that's, again, I'm not going to preclude me from voting in the poll question, but
you're voting no.
But I'm gonna vote no for now.
Okay.
And this comes on a day, and we're gonna get to the full breadth of the other news. Like, I'm so angry right now with the Norris voting. So angry. Like, and I'm media. I try not to cheer. But there's ownership of this player. First of all, I think he's a stand-up player, stand-up guy, I think, for the most part. I've got zero evidence to the contrary. And you just love to watch this guy.
Yeah,
no one wants this guy to leave this market.
No.
Nobody does.
No.
And honestly, no matter what they like, make up your dream trade scenario. Let's say he's traded to Buffalo for Peterka and Byram and blah blah blah. Like, those are nice players. None of them will bring me to the arena like Quinn Hughes does.
Of course not. Of course not.
You may be a better team. Even
winning may bring you to the arena, and they're in. So you mentioned we don't know what motivated that comment from Rutherford. There's part of me that just thinks he said the quiet part out loud because he's charged with planning the future of the Vancouver Canucks, and he knows this is a big and looming issue. The other part we don't know is how Quinn feels about all this. Good tweet here from Sean. We don't really know he intends to leave or that he expects a perfect offseason and season. The truth is, he is the only one who knows how he feels or what his thoughts are. Completely fair. Few other things got back by way of feedback here on X in the early going. Don said, I'd agree to trade Hughes. He's going to leave anyway. I think they could get a 4-for-1 return for him, and they could get much needed pieces. James, this is the hill I'm dying on. Do it quietly, harvest the assets. It sucks, but reality bites. And then there's this from Daniel, and I think this is instructive too. He says, this is a trade deadline conversation along with Demco, but only if we're out of the playoff race and are going full rebuild. If you think you can get the same or similar value for Quinn Hughes at the trade deadline in a scenario where the Canucks are out of it, and if you're willing to just take the risk that he doesn't get hurt, then absolutely. You've got time.
But nobody knows that.
Use it.
Nobody could possibly forecast that accurately and know that you're getting the same price. Nobody can forecast that.
But if they're... See, I think you can forecast and say to yourself, he's probably worth more this summer than he is at the deadline. But it may be similar.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The logic is favoring this summer over the trade deadline. You've got 31 captive teams who are undefeated in the summer.
And have yet to spend their money and their cap space.
And I think there'd be some struggling teams that might be interested anyhow at the trade deadline, but it just takes on a different beast. And what if you're... what if you're right on the button on the last playoff spot at the trade deadline? Like you're saying no to the playoffs, you're risking no playoffs.
Well, we know the owner won't do that.
But I mean, again, like, are you any worse necessarily? Like folks, I just made that up, but I'm just saying for the sake of the arguments, let's say you bring back Tuch and Byram. Again, I'm making this up. You may not be that much worse. But I'll go back to this, folks. This market, it might have been a month into the Quinn Hughes rookie season. We all looked at each other and said, he hath cometh.
Yes.
The elite defenseman. And this is all due respect to Yerke and everybody else that came before him. The Norris capable defenseman that had been missing.
The game changer.
For 50 years. Had arrived. Yeah, and now years later,
really the Canucks franchise can be divided. To pick up on your biblical analogy, BQ and AQ. Before Quinn and after Quinn arrived, he is. And again, with all due respect to Hank and Danny, and to Pavel Bure, I think you make a case he's the best player in franchise history.
Yeah,
right here, right now.
Yep,
without even seeing the totality for sure. Of his
and that goes for that goes for bottom line and excitement. Which Pavel had some bottom line obviously too, but it's down to those two for the guys that had bottom line and excitement, right? All due respect to the Sedins.
They weren't the spectacle. Some of the shifts between them, of course, were, but night in, night out. The athletic tools and the moments that just make you look at your neighbor and go, did you see that? Quinn and Pavel are in a company of their own. I was at the Nat last night, called an Uber. Guy showed up.
BZ4X?
It was the Toyota BZ4X.
And
was this thing beautiful.
That's the kind of vehicle you got. Like, it wouldn't be categorized under the luxury banner, but it is luxurious. And that's good for your bottom line in the end, because it means you can get it for 0.99% financing for 36 months for the LE all-wheel drive edition. It means you can get up to $5,000 in incentives. Don't pay the luxury price tag, but get the luxury vehicle. It's spectacular. So much fun. Fully electric. Pass by every gas station. Stay in the HOV lane. You won't regret it. Just take one for a test drive. Pacific Toyota dealers or shoptoyota.ca.
Our top story today brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Had a couple of Yellow Dogs last night at the park. No repeat for Hughes. Canucks captain finishes third in Norris voting behind Cale Makar and Zach Werenski.
Burying the lead.
In defense of his 2024 trophy, he got 2 first-place votes. Somehow 7 voters left him off their ballot.
Serenity now.
12 voted him in 5th place. just to give him a moment and round out the vote. He got 39 second place votes. I was one of them. He got 110 third place votes, 21 fourth.
And you know what? I'm okay. It very clearly was the Makar, Werenski, Hughes podium. That's what the vast majority. That's the way it looked. Those are the balloons of votes were in that order
for sure.
And I'm okay with that, given the lack of games played for Quinn Hughes and the lack of a playoff spot.
I voted Hughes over Werenski just because I felt like Quinn's most valuable to his team, if you will, the Hart Trophy wording logic applied better to the Canucks than Werenski to the Blue Jackets.
It was pretty close to a tie between those two, given what the seasons and both of them were on non-playoff teams. So, but the fact that there are accredited media in this league, and you got 5 votes here, folks.
Yeah.
If you can't find Quinn Hughes in your top 5 of defensemen, hand in your damn card. Hand in your card. You're not watching the same sport. You are covering the NBA that night, clearly. You are not watching the sport. That is a not fireable offense. Don't wish anybody to lose their job, but you don't get to vote anymore.
PHWA revoking.
Yes. Sorry. There's not 5 better defensemen than Quinn Hughes in the National Hockey League. What the hell are you talking about? Vote him 5th. You're still wrong, but fine. Vote him 5th. The fact that 7 are like, no, don't care for him. I can only...
Who is this Quinn Hughes guy?
Yeah.
Vancouver come again? I never see them
Don't
on
like
TV.
what he does. Really?
Well,
really?
I'm not sure it's that. I think it's more unaware. J-Pat has done the sleuthing.
And this matters too.
Of the 7 who did not have Quinn on the ballot, 5 are from the East, 3 from Montreal.
Yeah. And that's
2 from the West.
That's Lane Hudson protection.
There can't be 2 Mighty Mike defensemen who play that sort of game, one a little older than the other on your ballot. You can't find room for that?
That's my logic that they're using.
Okay.
Yeah.
Leave Hughes off to float Hudson's candidacy?
Yes.
2 from the West.
Please
tell me it's in the Midwest,
yes.
like Minnesota, St. Louis, and they are, they're early to bed types.
That's the only excuse. It's not a good excuse, but it's the only...
Please tell me they aren't Western Canadian voters. Please tell me they aren't Pacific Coast voters.
Evan Bouchard fans.
Yeah.
Honest to God.
I voted for a number of years, and then I didn't vote for like a decade. And the last 2 years, I've been back as a voting member. And I take the same approach I took 10 years ago. And that is that your votes are important, meaningful. You should put some time and effort into them. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I got everything right. And in fact, I think there's a very good case that if somebody saw my ballot tip to tail, they could pick different things apart and point me out as wrong in certain categories. But, typically I get the ballot and then I spend that weekend or a couple of hours each day that weekend digging into it a little bit more. And in some cases, like, for example, we don't vote Vezina, but we do vote for the NHL All-Star teams. So when I'm filling out that goaltender ballot, 1, 2, 3, it's always a call or a text to Kevin Woodley and say, okay, Kevin, edify me, enlighten me. What do you think I should do? Now, this year it was pretty cut and dry that Connor Hellebuck was going to be on the top of my goaltender ballot. And it was also pretty clear that Andrei Vasilevsky was going to be on that ballot as well. And then I took Kevin's 2 cents and I went out and did some independent, and I actually came out with Darcy Kemper, number 3. Probably wouldn't have thought that on the way in. Mm-hmm. Wasn't the instinct, but that's what my research, and it may have been flawed, revealed. The Selke each and every year is a tough one for me, and I'll canvass different people. Always talk to Harm Dial and others. Hey, what do you think of Selke? What are you looking at? Which metrics? Blah, blah, blah. And, formulate a Selke ballot on what is probably the most difficult one, right? Defensive forward. Blake, I think there are a lot of people who I've paid attention to the NHL season. I got my ballot. Oh, here comes the deadline. Oh, I better fill this in quickly. And omit worthy candidates somewhere along the line. That's the only reason I can come up with.
I just don't know how you don't get swept up in the, are you not on social media? Do you not see Quinn Hughes plays that go viral? Do you?
Yeah.
I don't understand. I can tell you the number of times that I saw a Zach Werenski play go viral. It was 0 times. And I'm not saying not a good defenseman. I'm just saying, I don't know how you avoid Quinn Hughes.
Well, I mean, in some cases, Blake, timelines are curated to be narrower than
I see McCarr stuff, though.
But
I see Lane Hudson stuff.
You may have a broader follow list and timeline than others.
Maybe.
Anyways.
That's the guy in our poll question, by the way. The guy I'm going to the wall for. And that's, again, back to the poll question. That's the torturous nature of this poll question.
Yeah.
Is what's best for this organization going forward? Man. Be ashamed to lose a guy so beloved, so electric.
Well, his value obviously isn't at an all-time high because now he's just the third place Norris guy as opposed to the defending and reigning
doesn't even get on every ballot. We'll give you a second round. Give you a second round.
I don't know, Jim. 7 guys left him off his ballot. That's got to say something. Good feedback here from the chat. This is Devin, I believe. I think if Quinn had played in the Four Nations, those 7 people would have had a different view.
Yeah.
I think it was an exposure.
Maybe.
But of course, you're not supposed to
consider
Four Nations games in this. It's not part of the exercise.
But it just forces that face in front of you at that time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe.
We've talked about Neighborhood Brewing and their new offering, the Be Cool Pineapple Tepache. We learned it's Tepache.
Yes.
Funky little number, tart, tropical refresher, inspired by the traditional Mexican tepache, bursting with juicy pineapple, hint of cinnamon, some warmth. Be Cool is a laid-back brew with a crisp and tangy finish that hits just right. Could have used a couple of those while you were stuck on the plane this morning, huh?
It was a little early.
It was 3 hours sitting on the plane on the runway. Oh, I hate when they do that. Yeah. And I realize they don't always know, and sometimes it can be a much shorter delay. But at a certain point, I always feel like, bring me back to the damn gate. At least let me sit in the airport. I'm a big guy. I don't fit well in those airplane seats to begin with.
Near the end of the delay,
at least at the terminal, you have more food offerings.
Near the end of the delay, they said there's regulations that we can't have you on the plane for much longer than this.
Oh,
otherwise
good.
We have to take you out.
Good.
But no, I didn't want that. I wanted to get going.
Well, yeah, you had a show to make.
Barely.
We were this close to me doing the show solo today.
Sakaris. Nobody wants that. That's usually most days anyhow, but...
You used to say nobody, yeah. You used to say no one would know the difference.
Oh, man.
Okay, fantastic news for those hoping to watch the Abbotsford Canucks in the Calder Cup playoff series against Charlotte, which begins on Friday. Flow Hockey. And this is Chris Peters, you were telling me, down in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's part of the mix there. I don't know how...
Yeah. They are making Game 1, 4 p.m. Friday, available for free. Stream off YouTube, X, and Facebook. Now, I only saw them specify Game 1.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know if the rest of the series is going to be free or then you're going to have to sign up. And, Blake has Well, he did a lot of pounding of the fist on the table today, but he's also been pounding the fist on the AHL and make the product more available and cheaper.
Well, it's a very similar story to what's happened this past week with me and with the TSN One Soccer collaboration here. Is that, for things like the AHL TV, for the hardcores, if you live in Wilkes-Barre and, Stockton and wherever, Bakersfield, not Stockton, Bakersfield.
Hershey, I think, would be probably the big one.
Yeah, you want to do the full year subscription, and because you're going to go in and out with your team, you'll watch the majority of games, yada, yada, yada. But when you get to something as marquee as that, and for One Soccer all the year long with the CPL and all that, that's fine. But when it gets to big time stuff, where you're not going to get people to subscribe. Like, no one's going to subscribe for the year to watch a few games here in the Calder Cup Final. They're not. But you want to get your brand out there still. You want to still be a part of that. You do things like this. You make it free. That's better for your business. People are now seeing your name. There's a bunch of people that never knew Flow Hockey existed until this very moment. But now they're going to watch this. They're going to see your brand, and you've got a chance to get some new subscribers. But one game's not going to do it, Matt. Game one for free is not going to do it. They should just make the whole damn final free. Like, get the casuals in. You've already got the diehard. They've already subscribed to Flow Hockey for the season. You've got them locked and loaded. If you want a chance to expand your footprint and subscriptions, make the whole final free. I mean, people still have to jump through the hoops and download it and all that stuff, so... You have to make it as easy on them as possible. Mm-hmm. I'll watch it.
So Friday, game one. They play the first two in Charlotte before the middle three. Game 5, if necessary, here. By the way, Charlotte's a really great opponent here.
Yeah.
They have won 8 straight games. They swept the Eastern Conference Final. They swept the Eastern Conference Semi. Deep team, talented group. We'll get into it more tomorrow and later this week as we pin down on this series a little bit more.
Yeah. The split is not as easy as it sounds on this. No,
now Game 5 next Saturday, if necessary, at Abbotsford Center is sold out. Game 4 Thursday was close at last check. It's going to sell. Look, I think Game 3 on Tuesday is going to sell out as well, but there were more tickets available for that game than the others. And little odd, tickets went on sale shortly after the Baby Canucks punched their ticket. Then they came off the market. Then they were put back on the market, and it looks to be at higher prices. It almost sounds like somebody jumped the gun and made these available before, checking in with the boss and finding out, no, we should raise it, the ticket prices. I mean, I don't want to think that, but this is Canuck Sports Entertainment, and we sort of know how they roll. So anyways... should be a lot of fun as Manny Malhotra and his Chargers play for a trophy. Lekramaki, is this a new lease on life and you put him in the lineup in game 1 after some healthy scratching, or do you go with the guys that got you there and you ain't got time to develop a prospect in a high-stakes series that's all about winning? Where are you at there?
I think you need to see what he's doing in practice, if he's hanging his head in practice and that sort of stuff, and if he is, no. If he's champing at the bit in practice and showing that he wants to get in, then yes. And again, don't dress him on the third or fourth line, though. Like, you're going to have to give him Max Sasson or Linus Karlsson or Ratu if he's healthy. Like, give him an actual center to work with. Yep. Like, it's not going to work to have him down the lineup.
There are a couple teams around the NHL where there's a fair bit of mystery in terms of which direction they're going to go this summer. One of them is the New York Islanders. We talked about them earlier this week with a new general manager in Mathieu Darche, an existing holdover and typically strong-voiced head coach in Patrick Roy, and whether or not that's a team that's going to look to retool, rebuild, or even strip it all the way down. Don't know. In fact, that plan may well be in formulation as we speak. The other was the Boston Bruins, who had a dreadful season by the Boston Bruins standards, and even made, what looked to be a rebuild trade at the deadline in sending Brandon Carlo, who was under contract with term, a big drafted and developed Boston Bruin defenseman, to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we're starting to get more information out of Boston in terms of where Don Sweeney and Cam Neely of Maple Ridge are leaning. The talk now is that Boston could be interested in packaging the number 7 overall pick to land a high-end talent whose career sort of aligns with David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy, their 2 best players. So, if that report is true, then this ain't a rebuild from the Bruins. This is some degree of retool. And there's even wonder in Boston about whether that number 7 pick in a package could land Elias Pettersson, Blake.
I mean, it could be part of an Elias Pettersson package, but no, the Vancouver Canucks do not want futures. They need live bodies.
I think they'd be back into Roenick, Marcus Pettersson sort of territory there about do you take in picks and then.
Well, you got to have that lined up, though, too, right?
Of course you have to line it up. Of course you have to line it up. But this is pretty interesting. And look, this happens often in the few weeks leading up to the draft. We had fun with Cam Robinson yesterday. It's lying season these days. But Utah is posturing as though the number 4 pick is available. Boston is posturing in terms of the number 7 pick being available. We don't often see trades in the top 10 of the NHL draft, but is it a little more believable this year, given that people aren't exactly doing cartwheels about this class of prospects? I don't know.
I also think there's a bunch of teams, both perennial losers and bubble teams, that think they can be good with a good summer.
Yeah, for sure.
So that leads you to believe this could be a little bit of a crazier summer. Again, money makes you delirious, right?
Yep.
And the cap space is going to make a few teams a little bit delirious.
Yep.
And so, I mean, is there 4 teams in the league that don't think they've got a chance to be decent this year? I think it might be something like that.
Honestly, I think it is. And there's some talk now in Seattle that new general manager Jason Botterill looking to package up young assets. They've got to be good now. They've sort of the bloom is off the rose there. Honeymoon is over. Having trouble with tickets.
They'll definitely think that they can be good.
Does Buffalo need another draft pick in at number 9? God knows they've got the longest playoff drought going. Anaheim has already declared itself. More on that in a second. But they're at 10th overall. And there's even talk that Pittsburgh's looking to move up from number 11.
San Jose has probably resigned that they need another year to be good.
Yep.
So they're 1. In the West, Chicago's probably resigned as well. Nashville wants to bounce back.
Nashville's thinking Marchessault and Stamkos in year 2.
That was a fluke.
More settled.
Yeah.
And plus, Nashville still has a ton of young prospects, very few of whom have made their NHL mark yet. That could well influence their competitiveness next season.
Philadelphia maybe on the other side, and that's about it.
Probably a step. I think Philadelphia is looking for a step-up season. I mean, I'd be stunned if they traded number 6 because I think that's still a work under.
But I don't think they have playoff aspirations for next year.
Well,
I don't think so.
You know that coach, though, Blake.
Yes.
And Philly actually with 4 second-round draft picks, so if they're going to trade futures, I think it's more likely 2 first-rounders, too, actually. 3 first round. They have 22nd overall, 32nd overall, and then 4 picks in the second round. So don't think they're going to trade 6, but the rest of those, who knows? And so, look, there's some intrigue at the top of the draft. Are the Islanders going to take the defenseman Matthew Schaefer? Are they going to swing for offense with Michael Misa? Did they take the local kid James Haggins? Did they trade down out of that spot? Talk that San Jose, Chicago might be looking to move up in the draft. So I think you have some drama at the top of the draft. And for all we know, Blake, depending on how some of these high picks fall, that could well influence some other trades, including trades for roster players as we get through the top 5. There could be some real wild cards go at number 4 and number 5. And then all of a sudden, teams are looking at Philadelphia at 6, Boston 7, Seattle 8, going, I can't believe he's still there. Yeah, we're willing to trade this roster player given that guy is there who we never thought would be there in an attainable position.
But those are rarely blockbuster. Like, I don't think you're, like, again, given the draft period, I don't think you're getting as much for the number 7 as you would normally. And I think in those scenarios, those are spur of the moment. Yeah, you can have this third line winger.
And trade season is underway. Frank Saravelli, Daily Faceoff, reporting the New York Rangers are completing a deal for forward Chris Kreider. He would go to Anaheim for a prospect, with the Ducks taking on the remainder of his contract, 2 more years at $6.5 million. This would be the second time that Pat Verbeek and the Ducks take on a veteran with trade protection and term left that the Rangers have been looking to move for some time. You'll remember they did that with defenseman Jacob Trouba at midseason. So Verbeek and the Ducks are declared here. Like, they want to be better. They had the big announcement hiring Joel Quenneville. They're making huge capital improvements to their arena and the surrounding district. They're going to be spending to the cap. The owner said that for the first time in some time. So Anaheim is looking to improve its lot in life. They're early to move on a player who, let's face it, can score goals. Fell out of favor in New York. In fact, a lot of things fell out of favor in New York last year. The room was very upset that Chris Drury, the general manager, would go to the lengths that he did to get Trouba to waive that no-move clause, but they were underachieving, and here you go. So the Rangers are retooling as they see fit. And
that's a good trade for Anaheim. That's the kind of guy they need in that room.
Yeah, well, and especially since the prospect they're giving up, Kerry Terrence, a second-round pick from 2023, OHL center iceman, his totals actually went down this year. He was near a point-per-game guy last season. He was less of a point-per-game guy this season, so a little bit of a flatlining prospect there. So they're not really giving up too much, Anaheim, to add a guy who can score goals, especially in short areas and on the power play.
And add some swagger and veteran presence and all that sort of stuff.
For sure. So trade season underway. Look, the league doesn't love when trades get announced or leaked during the Stanley Cup Final, but we saw it last year with the Linus Ullmark trade from Boston to Ottawa. Heck, we saw it in the conference finals a number of years ago with the Goodbranson-McCann trade here with the Canucks and Panthers, if you'll recall that one. So don't be surprised if you start to hear more of this now, even with the Stanley Cup Final heading to Game 4 tomorrow.
I'm sure the Canucks have got one on ice, right? They're just
very well could. You know Jimmy Rutherford.
Just top drawer.
Jimmy Rutherford. He gets his deal done, then he goes and likes to foreshadow it in media interviews. Okay, we get to this at the end of the program, but I want your take because you were up close and personal. You called the games. The Canadian men's national team and this Canadian Shield tournament at BMO. I told you on Monday I was a little disappointed to see so many empty seats at BMO on what looked like a glorious Saturday afternoon in Toronto against Ukraine. It was a crowd of just over 20,000. It was 18-5 last night for the Ivory Coast. And we will get into Jesse Marsh's comments later that he was expecting bigger and that he's challenging Vancouver to sell out BC Place for this Canadian men's team.
And I would love for...
Craig Forrest, the former Canadian international broadcaster, was also critical, saying we're not yet arrived as a soccer country. Like, if we are culturally, it's got to be a thing. It's got to be full houses. And so you tell me, what was your perspective after?
I can hear...
You're out today from the World Cup.
I can hear a small argument that this thing was announced like 7 weeks ago. And as I said before I left, or I think even on Monday, like, the soccer community is there, but they need lead up. It's tough to throw things together and get people to respond as long as, Messi isn't coming. Like, people mobilize pretty damn quick for that, but that's a little different.
So 7 weeks, you don't think was enough time to market and sell this event?
Well, that's when it was organized. I didn't start to see real marketing of it until 3 weeks before the event, really. So I think you need to work to get these things in place a little bit more ahead of time.
Okay.
But hey, we're standing on the table here, folks. Let's fill it up for Honduras. Let's prove the Torontonians wrong here, and that Canada is ready for this sort of responsibility.
Because here's the other thing, Blake. Jesse Marsh has spent a lot of time in Vancouver since taking over the reins of this program. We've had him here in studio. We've seen him at BC Place, at Caps games. I mean, he's even come for reasons that have nothing to do with soccer. Like, he's come on business, marketing, and promotion grounds.
But he's also come just to scout guys that he already knows a ton about.
Right.
Like, he's putting in the work here.
And so what I'm saying with this new Canada Soccer leadership, I think we have leaders who are more inclined to bring that program here to Vancouver more often if, in fact, we do get that big, raucous red and white crowd Tuesday for the Gold Cup opener against Honduras.
And here's the thing.
Like, I think we have a bit of a clean slate here, which we haven't had for a while, I would argue, Blake.
That's the big match, too, in the group, right? That's the second-ranked team in the group for Canada. So that's the A1 lineup. Mm-hmm. So that's the good news. You're going to pay. You're not going to get what we saw last night, which saw a lot of rotation and was probably the weaker of the two lineups over the weekend. You're going to get the top. Mm-hmm. You're going to get a look at who is sort of in the driver's seat for World Cup positions, minus Alphonso Davies, who's injured.
Incidentally, do you think his absence had anything to do with the smaller crowds?
No.
I didn't think so either.
No.
Because he might still be the biggest name star for Canada, but as you and others have argued, Jonathan David is probably now the best player for Canada.
Yeah, I mean, it helps, but I don't think that's the reason. I wouldn't point to that necessarily. Okay. So he won't be there, but let's fill it up.
And did you hear Victor Montagliani yesterday, of course, FIFA vice president, musing about what a shame it would be to lose the Whitecaps. This after the report, the Tsleil-Waututh Nation
wants Hastings.
Yes, with a non-binding memorandum of understanding to take over the casino and the property there at Hastings Racecourse, which could throw a wrinkle into the Whitecaps.
It's a big footprint. There's room for everybody there. Yeah. Maybe there's room for collaboration. Like I don't think the Tsleil-Waututh want to operate the track, but
no,
it'd be for the land. But maybe they would be interested in being.
I saw our friend Dan. Friend Dan Jukic at the baseball game last night, and he wasn't bubbling with optimism.
Yeah, about the future of the track. Yeah. No. But I mean, it's a big piece of land. They could theoretically throw, have that deal and put the stadium somewhere else. But it would mean, going right down to the ground and starting from scratch somewhere. Yeah. So we'll see.
Anyways, there are a lot of soccer happenings in and around this city and the country.
It's only building.
Yeah, with 1 year to the World Cup, with this extraordinary season from Vancouver Whitecaps FC, with the Canadian men's national team now in a international tournament where they could very easily win and lift the trophy. In fact, the Gold Cup trophy was in Studio Tuesday. You missed it, buddy.
I know.
Wrong day to be away.
And keep
in
mind
some funny photos.
I don't know what Mexico's team will look like for the Gold Cup, but the USA's got a couple guys that are not going to be there, including Pulisic. Show
booed off the pitch at halftime, down 4 goals to the Swiss yesterday,
and they were similarly beat by Turkey too. So
yeah. All right, more on that later in the program as well. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta, a fantastic spot to watch all the big games, but an even better spot for your upcoming party or event. If you need a venue for a team-building event, a summer sociable, check out Greta. They have this amazing arcade that encircles the bar. They got games for everyone. Air hockey, Pop-A-Shot, the video games of your youth, the new video, whatever you want. They've got it there at Greta for you to play. And, of course, street food menu is outstanding. The tacos are a personal favorite. For more info to book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. Frank Corrado is going to join us coming up. Asked him all the Quinn Hughes discussion. We have that one. Talk about some of the guys who are out there and available either via trade or on the free agent market. A little bit on Alex Tuch in Buffalo, William Karlsson in Vegas, Nick Schmaltz in Utah. Not to mention reflect back on his experience at the Calder Cup Final with Utica and Travis Green all those years ago, Jacob Markstrom all those years ago, and tells us where he thinks the Stanley Cup Final is going to go from here after a very disappointing Game 3.
We pumped up the tires of the Stanley Cup Final way too much yesterday. Way too much.
the show yesterday was just sadness and griping about what Game 3 turned into after two of the all-time classics in Game 1 and Game 2. Anyways, fingers crossed for Game 4 tomorrow, everybody. Then later in the program, the golf report as the best players in the world head to one of the teethiest golf courses you can imagine, Oakmont in suburban Pittsburgh.
I didn't remember that there was a winning score of 5 over.
Mm-hmm.
And they're predicting it could be 6-10 if the rain holds
if the
off.
rain doesn't come and the golf course gets firm and fast, holding fairways is going to be a problem, which means you're in this diabolical rough. And then if you have checked out any of the social media posts from PGA Tour players, like we're talking John Rahm and Colin Morikawa and some of the big names, they cannot get over how some of these greens are rolling and just how difficult it's going to be to hold these greens. And in some cases, Blake, even get down in 2 putts.
And some players
like
get it.
You're going to see some 4 putts this week.
Some players get it, that it's the U.S. Open, and this is the thing.
That's it.
You got to jump through. Some players don't. Some players people are watching us to see us make good shots.
No. We do that 51 weeks a year.
And
this is the 1 week a year where we hope
to see
you suffer.
We want to see tears.
We relish in your misery, and don't take it personal. It's just the U.S. Open.
I want to see a club head swung so deep into the ground that he just leaves it behind.
There better be a camera on Tyrrell Hatton for the entirety of his time on course at Oakmont.
He would mutter at 18
ISO
under.
Camera. There has to be a Tyrrell Hatton camera guy who just sits there and follows the fiery Englishman every single stroke, every step of the way.
Max Homa didn't get in, did he? I don't think
I don't know, actually.
I don't think he did.
Oh.
Because he could
do
cry.
You know,
I think he might cry.
Do you know he joined the Golf Channel panel last night, and he was terrific. He's a huge personality on top of a great story.
Yeah.
His last name is Vogt, Vogt. He's a full-time dentist. He qualified for the U.S. Open. He grew up playing Oakmont, played in like a USAM or a U.S. Junior tournament at Oakmont. He's 6'6", and at one point beefed up to go compete on long drive. He's an amateur player with an amateur background who has a day job and qualified. He's like I think he's like 10,000 to 1 or something like that to win the golf tournament. But these are the sorts of stories you get at the U.S. Open where you have open qualifying, right? For anybody, including JT Miller tried to qualify. Anyways, he will be, he's the first guy off the tee tomorrow too, believe it or not, at 6 something. He said, well, I hope I have friends and family, but it's awfully early. So you'll get those sorts of stories as well. Okay, Bet365.
Fowler and Homa lost in a playoff.
And Max was carrying his bag around U.S. Open qualifying, which you don't see tour players with a bag over their shoulder walking up fairways very often. Bet365 bets of the day, staying on this topic. Gun in my head, I'm taking Scotty Scheffler to win the U.S. Open because his best is better than anyone else's best right now.
Does.
But he's an overwhelming favorite, and there's no fun in that. So taking Xander Schauffele here. He won 2 majors last year, the PGA and the Open Championship. And what we said about him in those victories, what everybody said about him in those victories, is nobody this side of Scheffler is better at hitting the fairway, hitting the green, getting down in 2 putts or less. Brutal conditions expected at Oakmont. I'm going with a top player who has won majors and maybe plays the most efficient game on the planet. And you mentioned, Blake, the 2 camps of golfers, those who hate it, those who embrace it. We'll get a quote from Xander later in the program. He's one of the guys who understands what the score is at the U.S. Open, that it's going to be suffering. And he's ready to take it head on. He's the 5th choice at plus 2,000. Give me Xander Schauffele to win the U.S. Open.
Okay, I'll stay with the U.S. Open as well. I'll give you my pick here. And I'm of 2 minds. I got 2 names, so I'll give you 2 different odds. Because the condition of the rough, you need to be a strong man to get
this. Yes.
It pains me to say this, and he hasn't played particularly well of late, but I'll go John Rahm at plus 1,300.
Okay.
for the strength and beef. And then my dark horse, if you will, still without a victory on tour. But he's played in interesting weather. He's a survivor out there.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Fleetwood, is this his day? Plus 3,200 on Tommy Fleetwood.
I was looking at some of the metrics. Tommy Fleetwood also excels at playing difficult golf courses.
Mm-hmm.
There are 14 guys in the field who all score positively on the strokes gained stats on difficult golf courses where the scoring is at this level or higher, and Fleetwood is one of them.
Well, he's good in weather,
in fact,
too.
he's eighth.
Yeah, he's a survivor. So
Yeah, he is.
He's due. He's just due.
There's only 2 par 5s on this course, and they're really not all that reachable. There's 2 drivable par 4s, but one of them is just the way it's laid out, the longer hitters might not go for it because it's more difficult for them to sort of shape the ball, whereas a guy who hits it a little shorter and has the ability to run it up. Anyway, it's a fascinating golf course. Want to get in on the action on the Stanley Cup playoffs at Bet365? They got you. Game props, player props, totals, money line, bet the series winner, the Conn Smythe winner. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, an official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 19 or older. Frank Corrado, next. Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Bogey Juice. Yes, that's Bogey Juice, because you're going to make more bogeys than you make birdies, and really at the end of a golf round, you should kick back and drown your sorrows, or have a refreshment at the very least. Bogey Juice is a top-shelf vodka. It is blended with crisp apple flavoring, kicking ginger for that refreshing zing in every shot. It's sweetened to perfection, simple syrup. It's the juice that's guaranteed to make your golf buddies beam with envy, despite the score it refers to. Check out bogeyjuice.com right now for more info. Use promo code SP15 for 15% off Bogey Juice product and merch. Here's Frank Corrado, former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst. How are you?
I'm good, buddy. I am... I'm wondering where my Sports Center guy is. Where's Mr. Sports Center?
Yeah. He's come back from Toronto.
Yeah.
He had an eventful week. He called both the Canadian soccer matches. He did his first Sports Center in 5 years. So,
man,
he's on his way back. He had some delays out of Pearson this morning.
I was going to grill him about, walking into the newsroom. Did they play like an old highlight reel from back in the day? Him and Dutchie, him and Hedge. Like, what did they have planned for him? But I guess we'll find out later.
Yeah. You can ask him about that next week. Yeah, he walked in all OG. All the young people are like, "Who is that guy?" And, there's somebody who's been a
hello,
lifer in the corner going, Blake, where have you been?
Yeah, back in my day around here.
Yeah, exactly. I remember this guy. He had a very good run there on Sports Center. Yeah. I want to talk about Quinn Hughes today. He finishes third in Norris voting. And look, I don't think he quite had a case to be the winner this year in defense of his Best Defenseman award. Answer me this, Frank, because I see this a little more now amongst Canucks fans who are, of course, sweating, fretting a potential departure of Hughes after this season if things don't go well, or in a couple of seasons when his contract expires. Is there any wisdom? Is there a case to seeing what Quinn Hughes is worth on the trade market this summer?
Oh boy.
I know. It's the existential question right now for the Vancouver Canucks, but you tell me.
I get it. Like, I totally understand it. I think if you're in a management position in the NHL and you don't have a gauge on what your players are worth basically at any given time, you're probably not doing your job correctly. Like, if you were looking for a house, like if you're a first-time homeowner, or even not, like if you don't know that houses in your area go for X amount of dollars, and in that area they're going for that, like you're kind of behind the eight ball. So I feel like it's the same with management, where for sure it's not like you're shopping a player around. I'm not suggesting that they would shop him around now, but you would have to have some kind of casual conversations with managers and executive types, just kind of understanding, like, if this is something that we did, like, where do you think it goes? Like, I think you have to have an understanding of the marketplace, and you can separate the two. You can separate, like, actively shopping and just understanding where things are at. But with that being said, like, we're not that far away from this conversation potentially becoming a reality. So I do understand why you bring it up. And, like, if you look to, further down the road, don't mean to be doom and gloom, like, it's this year and next year, and then it's unrestricted free agency. So you're going to have like hard, honest conversations among the group about where this goes. But I think you're still trying to do everything you possibly can to try and retain that player's services. And then once you get that answer, like, if you have that answer already, then hey, you got to go down the path of seeing what you can get for him. But until you really get that answer, I think you're throwing everything at the wall to see if you can get him to stay and re-up. But you have to have an understanding of where things are at.
Yeah, another reason why I'm asking, Frank, is just as we size up this off-season free agency and, of course, the draft and all the different players who might be in play trade-wise, I just see so many buyers and so few sellers, my man. Like, I don't think there are as many teams motivated to be bad as we've seen recently, even with Gavin McKenna at the end of the rainbow. And, I'm just wondering, like, where are all these contenders and where are all these mid-pack teams looking to be playoff teams? Where are some of these bad teams looking to finally be competitive tip to tail? Like, where are they getting all of their players with so few teams who I think are in, full rebuild
This
modes?
is it, man. This is going to be an issue now for a while. And if we're still talking about expansion, you want 2 more teams in the league? Like, good luck. You can get players, for sure. You can get guys that are just guys. But to get difference makers, like, it's difficult. You're going to have something that makes them want to, sign with your team in free agency, or you're going to have to be really shrewd with how you, trade for guys and what you have available to give up. This is not an issue that's going to be going away anytime soon. And if you look at the standings for last year, like, okay, San Jose, do they still want to be bad? Does Chicago still want to be bad? If you go to the East, does Philly want to start taking steps in the right direction? Like, Buffalo surely has to start taking steps in the right direction. Pittsburgh has talked about how they want to kind of turn things around quickly. How many teams truly want to be bad after they've been bad for a little while now? I totally understand your argument and what you're saying. It's just like there's going to be an issue here as far as, like, talent that can change your team and make your team better, and as far as how you acquire it. It's not easy to be the Florida Panthers, although those are moves that anyone could have made realistically.
Yeah.
But you got to be aggressive enough and smart enough and obviously, not manipulate, but, like, use certain things, like, yes, tax situation, all that kind of stuff. It's just, there's going to be, you're right. There's going to be a lot of buyers, not a ton of sellers.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's ground to be made up this summer as a seller, knowing you're going to have so many interested parties in your players, whereas not a lot of options for them to go out and find guys. One name that has emerged here, Frank, down out in Buffalo, is that of winger Alex Tuch. Now, he's a upstate Western New York guy, but going into his final year, and the word is that either he's going to have to sign the long extension or the Sabres are going to put him on the market, fearing not wanting to lose him, of course, after this season. Big boy, can skate at a $4.75 million price tag. What do you think, Alex Tuch, as a fit for the Canucks or anybody else?
I think there would be a lot of interest in a player like that. Like he's 29, like you said, big guy. He can skate. He can shoot the puck. I do understand this from a Buffalo point of view, where it's like, Buffalo doesn't get afforded the luxury of kind of, kicking the can down the road and just seeing how the season plays out and then hoping you can make the pitch. There's a lot of teams that would want to have this guy's services, and you're not going to be at the front of the line as far as, like, there's not going to be a huge amount of loyalty there based on where this team has been at and the opportunities that are going to present itself to this player. But, I mean, you talk about a team last year in Vancouver that really struggled generating chances off the rush. Alex Tuch is a good player off the rush, for sure. Like, he's got that powerful stride. He can shoot it, kind of entering the zone. And, not to say that he's one-dimensional that way, but he's a guy that if you were trying to, help kind of spark a rush game or add a player who can give you a little more in that regard, he's a guy that would make some sense. And the number is obviously going to be a significant upgrade from the 4.75 that he's making right now, but you'll figure that out once you get to that point.
Big moves are being predicted in Utah, where the Mammoth are looking to take a step forward in their second season in Salt Lake City. One of the areas they want to improve is their goaltending, and people are wondering about Nick Schmaltz, the centerman, with 1 year left on his contract, and whether there might be a fit there with the Canucks and Thatcher Demco. Talk to me about Nick Schmaltz as a potential fit here.
He's a really good player. Like, when we have these conversations about guys that are underrated around the league, we're talking about superstars oftentimes, right? Like, Sasha Barkov continues to get thrown into that. But Schmaltz is a guy, because of where he's played. I know he played in Chicago. He had a lot of success with Patrick Kane. But since he kind of moved on to Arizona and Utah, unless you watch that team play, you don't realize how good he is. He is a great playmaker. He moves really well. He's a right-handed shot. I like a lot about his game. He does give you a little bit of lineup flex, in the sense that, like, he played a lot of left wing last year, but he can also play center ice. So he gives you a little versatility that way. As far as what that move would look like, Thatcher Demco, don't you kind of want to see what it looks like for him still? Are we ready to move on? I wouldn't be. I think the risk of moving on right away and not seeing what a whole summer of healthy training can do for him, I think that would be ill-advised.
Yeah,
you kind of owe it to yourself to see what this guy can do healthy. And then the other thing, like a lot of, there's going to be some Canadian teams that struggle with this. Like, Nick Schmaltz is an American guy who played college hockey, who's only ever played in the States. And if you're bringing him in on with 1 year left on his deal, you're really going to have to convince him to stay, are you not? Like, there's still that element to things. So, you can move on from Demko. You can bring in a guy for 1 year and then see you later. As much as he's a good player, I wouldn't be willing to do that just yet.
Yeah. So that brings up the question, Frank, if you're not willing to rob from your goaltending situation, unless you're moving Lankinen, you tell me, then if you're in the Canucks chair, where are you dealing from? Are you dealing from this blue line, either an older guy or one of the younger up-and-comers, or are you just looking to package the prospects and picks?
So I think you have a good stable of prospects that you can kind of leverage if you needed to. But we talked about Quinn Hughes, and we don't know what's on the horizon there. With that potentially coming to a head in the next couple of years, I would be weary about moving young defensemen within the organization, because you don't have the next Quinn Hughes. But if you have 3 or 4 guys that you think are going to make the jump and be quality NHL players, you can still keep yourself competitive. So I don't necessarily believe that, and I don't know if I've contradicted myself based on what we've talked about in the past, but I don't think I am. Like I don't think that's the spot, even though you have some flexibility there. I don't think that's the spot you kind of make a move from. You know, it's not that the Canucks are stuck. Like they're going into this year, they've got just over 12 million in cap space, you know, and they have 21 players on their roster. Like that's not a bad spot to be.
Nope.
It just depends, like, you know, what kind of like what moves can you make as far as who's available and wants to come kind of be the solution within your program, right? Like that's part of the pitch. Like, you're coming here to help us out. You're not coming to a ready-made thing that's the Florida Panthers and you just slide in. Like, you got to be part of the solution here.
And with your available cap space, you can probably buy 2 free agents, right? But is that enough? And is that enough quality, particularly at center ice, to get you where you want to be this coming season?
Yeah, like one of those guys should be Pius Suter, right? Like you're in a flexible situation. You need a center iceman. Well, at least you know what the guy's all about. And, you know, in theory, if he likes the way the last 2 years have gone, he would want to continue there. Like that's up to him. But yeah, like center ice is tough, man. Like, look at what Sam Bennett is doing right now. He's priced himself out of, you know, if he wants to anyways, he can price himself out of a lot of places. You know, if he wants to stay in Florida, which I think that's probably what's going to end up happening. But like it's you know, Tavares in Toronto, maybe. Who knows where Matt Duchene wants to go? It gets thin in a hurry, and when it comes to center ice.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because I know one of the things you look at for TSN and Free Agent Frenzy on July 1st is player values, and of course, with help from our friends at AFP Analytics. Mm-hmm. Where are you on paying big money, top dollar for intangibles when it comes to Sam Bennett?
Man, this is the thing. Like, we can't disparage what he has done in the playoffs because it is unbelievable, right? Like, we can't argue that. I was looking at this from Toronto's point of view the other day because, you know, Sam Bennett from Toronto.
There's rumors there. There's some that believe it's a Florida or Toronto derby on Bennett.
So let's say in a world where the Florida Panthers offer Sam Bennett $7 million a year, in order for Toronto to make that the same money, you know, take home wise, in your most basic point of view, is Toronto would have to get to $9.5 million. And so, you know, now like that's significant for Sam Bennett, but that's why that number 10 gets floated around for Sam Bennett, because you need to find a way to make the money equal. Okay, now what do you have to get to in order to pry him from a comfy situation in Florida? Like, there's got to be a little more juice on it in order to say, not only are we making you equal, like we're giving you this much more. So now you want to come to our organization. So I think it's going to be tough ultimately, unless Florida really lowballs it. Mm-hmm. I think it is going to be tough to pry him out of there. That's the reality that teams are facing. And let me just say, because the tax people will listen and people will tweet at me about the taxes, and everyone knows the taxes. That is the basic, you know, kind of like income tax calculation. It's like 36% in Florida. It's 53% in Toronto. And I understand you play in all those different cities and you get taxed differently, but those are credits. So essentially, like, that is a pretty strong number. And don't come at me with endorsements, because teams, you know, players, because the last thing guys want to do is go on their off days, do a million photo shoots and commercials just so they can make themselves whole on their money. They'd rather not have to do that and just make the money as is. Okay. So anyways, that's my.
I love it. Don't add him with endorsements.
Don't
He is
do
not
the endorsement
having.
thing for me,
I see that picking up in your town, and
yeah.
I get that it's the wishful thinking of hockey fans. Hey,
you get 4 scheduled days off a month, okay?
Yeah.
1 a week. Do you
and
think
if you have
on those
a family, like, for God's
like
sakes,
on those 4 days, do you want to have to go to Volvo and do a photo shoot? No.
Vegas is telling people that William Karlsson is not available right now. It sounds like their defenseman Nick Hague is. But that's another team that many are expecting big moves on, in part because of their history and in part because Mitch Marner has been connected there. If Karlsson does shake free, if they need to clear cap space, what do you make of William Karlsson coming off a difficult season?
Yeah, coming off a difficult season, but still has, I believe, 2 years on that deal. Like he's in year 6 of 8, 32 years old. I have a hard time with this one because I think Cassidy loves this guy as a player. Like, and there's something to be said for coaches, that have their guys that they really lean on. Like, you probably can't go to bat for everyone. Like, essentially the management is going to do what they want to do, but you probably got a bullet in the chamber for like, 1 or 2 guys that you really want to have around, right? And I feel like that might be the case for William Karlsson. But if he does become available, like you're getting a guy, like you talk about versatility and, strong defensively and still has an ability to give you offense and play against top lines. Like but that's why the coach would love this guy so much. Like essentially, I'm not going to call him a coach's dream because, that's Connor McDavid, that's Leon Draisaitl. But in a way, it's like, he is to his own degree as a player. So, if they're going to try and get creative and go after one of these big guys, yeah, they're going to have to clear some space. But yeah, he would help just about any team that he gets put on. And I don't really care that much about last year. Like, I'm looking more the track record, and the track record the last few years has been quite good for him.
It is the 10-year anniversary of your Utica Comets run to the Calder Cup Finals, Frankie. What do you remember about that run?
Man, you know what I remember about that? We were such a tight group, and a lot of teams say it for sure, and it's true on a lot of different occasions, but I give our captain, Cal O'Reilly, so much credit. He got our group together a ton. Throughout the season, we would be at his house doing stuff. After every round in the playoffs, we would be getting together as a group, and I remember like just talking about that all the time. That you don't get groups like that very often. It's hard to come by, and it was so natural and organic that all these guys, we all just kind of wanted to keep the thing going and play on the same team and go to war with each other. And ultimately we came up short, but that was a really special group, a really tight knit group. And I think a lot of that had to do with our leadership and Cal kind of leading the way. You don't forget about groups like that. You remember those guys in those days.
Well, between yourself and Alex Biega, Jacob Markstrom, Nolan Baumgartner, one of yours, that was an all good guy team too.
Yeah.
Looking in on it. Did it help your hockey career? Was there anything you took from that run and playing at that level?
Well, for sure, because we always say it at the start of playoffs, right? Like, team success tends to equal individual success. And sure enough, like, I had a bad training camp the next year. I was playing with a separated shoulder and a broken hand in that playoff run. And I had a bad camp, and then I get put on waivers and I get picked up by Toronto. Why? Well, like, they would have been watching that playoff run, and they would have been watching, the previous years before that. Like, if we lose in the first round, there's no guarantees that you get claimed on waivers. Like you mentioned, Alex Biega. Look how well Biega did, and he was a beast for us on that playoff run. Like Jacob Markstrom, he was a machine, like an absolute machine, right? So I think a lot of guys did have individual success after that. I think Barchi went on to, like, he signed his deal. A lot of guys really benefited from that. So it might not be tomorrow, but like that kind of stuff goes a long way for sure.
No doubt. Brendan Gaunce carved out a career after that. Ronald Kennens played some NHL games. So there were a bunch of guys. Answer me this. Jonathan Lekramaki here has been scratched for the last few games for the Abbey playoff run. I mean, he's their top prospect on that team because Wielander isn't playing. Like, how much would you be sweating that, or is it just about winning right now, and maybe it's even motivation for the young man as he heads into summer?
Yeah, I mean, Is he banged up? Do we know if he's hurt?
No, it's he was earlier in the playoffs. Now it's just healthy. So they've been winning without him in the lineup. They sat him down for a reset, and they've won the 3 games since. And so that's.
Listen, you get to the point where it's like winning is part of development, right? Like that you need to develop winners, and not to say that he's not that. It's just they think they probably have a better chance with whoever's playing right now. Like there's no, once you get to this point in the playoffs, there's no, hey, he's our first round pick, he's got to play this amount of minutes. Like that kind of stuff is reserved for, October through to March or early April. Like you got to put your best lineup forward right now, and maybe he'll benefit from it in the long run, you would think. But winning is part of the program as well when it comes to development.
Lastly, here on the Cup Final, Frank, the first 2 games were just glorious. Some of the best hockey we've seen in so long. I was so engaged with this Cup Final compared to others where I'm a neutral sitting back just hoping to watch great hockey. Did Florida unlock something in Game 3 about the Oilers and is taking this series into the muck, their route to victory here?
I'm not going to say...
Are you worried about the aesthetic of the Stanley Cup Final and all the up and down great play we saw in Games 1 and 2?
I'm not, because the way I see Game 3, yes, the Panthers were dominant. The Edmonton Oilers were horrible. Like they've played a lot of really good games, but that was not one of them. They fed into everything the Panthers want to do. Turned it over at the blue line. Undisciplined early and often in the game. Missed assignments in front of their goaltender. Goaltender didn't play well. Like just about everything that could have gone wrong for the Oilers went wrong. And not to mention 97 and 29 didn't have a great night either.
No.
So and that's your nuclear code. And so when all that happens, you get what you got. 6-1. Doesn't take anything away from the Panthers because they never deviate from their plan. And it's the same thing over and over again. And what they're doing in Games 1 and 2 is an investment, in Games 6 and 7 in a series. But I think the Oilers can and will play a much better game and give Florida more of a run.
I hope so.
It was a lot of unforced stuff for the Oilers.
I hope so. It would be a real shame if this series got uncompetitive from this point forward, because I think we are looking at the 2 best teams in hockey, and they can put on quite a show, as we saw in Game 1 and Game 2. Awesome stuff, Frank. Thank you for the time. I promise Blake next week, okay?
All right, buddy. Thanks. See ya.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. If you have your tickets to the big game, why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Harrison Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Well, the golf report brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Whistler Golf Club. It is U.S. Open week from Oakmont in suburban Pittsburgh, America's Carnoustie, if you will, the toughest course on the U.S. Open road, if not the toughest course in the whole damn land. And we got a showdown looming here between Scottie Scheffler and Rory McIlroy, only Rory isn't quite feeling it these days. He was saying yesterday that he has experienced a letdown since winning the Masters in April and completing the career Grand Slam. He says he has a letdown after every tournament he wins, that he likes to take a moment, savor them, enjoy them. He's also a little spicy about that non-conforming driver at the PGA Championship and it being leaked to the press. He was curt with a reporter who was asking him about his new driver. Meanwhile, Scottie is coming off victories at the PGA Championship, the second major of the season, and the Memorial. He's got 3 wins in his last 4 starts. So he tries to keep up this Tiger-esque run of dominance. He's the Bet365 favorite to win the tournament at just plus 250, so a lot of money on Scottie Scheffler here. Oakmont is a course with no trees and no water, and yet it still rates as one of the toughest out there. Golf Channel analyst Paul McGinley was saying last night that if the rain holds off and this course firms up, he thinks the winning score can be between 6 and 10 over par on Sunday. Dustin Johnson won a U.S. Open at Oakmont in 2016 at -4. Angel Cabrera was +5 as the winner in 2007, and Ernie Els -1 in 94. The thing about Oakmont, the rough. It is as thick, it is as tall as any rough we had seen at a U.S. Open. In many places, the rough just amounts to a penalty stroke, so it effectively works like water because the aim will be just advancing it a few yards back onto the fairway. So a bit of a throwback here as the winning scores at the U.S. Open, they've gone lower in recent years. Last 11 years, the winner has averaged -7, just over -7. The previous 9 years, it was just a little more than 1 under par. So Oakmont has teeth, and we'll bear them, and that's by design from the USGA. In fact, Xander Schauffele said this week, I don't think people turn the TV on to watch some of the guys just hit like a 200-yard shot on the green. You know what I mean? I think they turn on the U.S. Open to see a guy shooting 8 over and suffer. That's part of the enjoyment of playing in the U.S. Open for viewers. Yes, that is indeed the case. This is the tournament that makes them look a little bit more like us average hackers as they make their way through 4 rounds under the toughest conditions that U.S. golf, North American golf, has to offer. The Golf Report brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club, now open for the 2025 season and taking online bookings for the entirety of the year. Follow them on social at Whistler Golf. There was another scene playing out yesterday on the greens where a mama bear and 2 cubs, they were frolicking. Mama went to sort one of them who tumbled into the bunker. Then the other one took the opportunity when mama's back was turned to go and play with the flagstick. Never ceases at the Whistler Golf Club. Lots of bear activity. And if you have a group of 12 or more, ask about the Harrison Price midweek special, whistlergolf.com/groups. Well, Canada gets a 0-0 draw versus the Ivory Coast in Toronto last night, the BMO Field, before an announced crowd of 18,500. Some Whitecaps concern here as Sam Bennett had to be helped off the field in the 83rd minute with a leg injury. Jesse Marsh, Canada coach, said the Whitecaps defender is going to have a scan done on his calf. Adekube, poor Sam, he's already had a couple of injuries this year that have kept him out of the Caps lineup. And frankly, mentioned this Monday with Blake, attendance was very disappointing. When you consider the fact we are 1 year out from the start of the FIFA World Cup here in Canada, 1 year today, these were pretty good opponents. This is a darn good Canadian team with all sorts of internationals, a star player in Jonathan David, and even a lot of players from the GTA. They managed 20,000 for the game Saturday versus the Ukraine, 1,500 fewer last night. Craig Forrest, former Canadian international keeper and television analyst, it still amazes me that with the Canadian men's national team full of talent in Canada, still can't get overwhelming support at home, a year out from the biggest sporting event in this country that this country has ever seen. And Jesse Marsh was saying the same thing, more or less, in the postgame. He said, I thought the crowd on Saturday was good, but I was hoping for bigger. I think everybody's learning about how to continue to market our sport. And Jesse Marsh then pointed forward to the big Tuesday match here at BC Place, the Gold Cup opener against Honduras. Marsh, quote, I really want to challenge that community to come out and support this team and be behind the movement in every way. So there you go, Vancouver and soccer fans across British Columbia. Coach wants to see you loud and proud Tuesday as they get going for real at the Gold Cup. And this is very much a tournament that Canada can win. You know, typically Canada is looking up at the United States and Mexico. As we know, the Mexicans are not exactly in their heyday. And then there's the U.S., booed off the pitch at halftime yesterday, trailing the Swiss 4-0. So the U.S. team is in disarray. The Mexican side is nowhere near as strong as it has been. This is a massive opportunity for Canada soccer to win a Gold Cup and launch themselves in the 1 year countdown to the FIFA World Cup. As for the Caps, unbeaten in 11 MLS matches, and with the results Saturday in Columbus, they would become just the 5th team in MLS history to have 1 or fewer losses in their opening 17 games. 2 of the previous 4 went on to capture the Supporters' Shield for the best regular season record, including Cincinnati just 2 years ago. And Caps busy in international duty, besides the 3 that were playing for Canada yesterday. Pedro Vite and Ecuador qualified for the World Cup last night with a 0-0 draw against Peru. They're doing qualifying down in South America. Andres Cubas and Paraguay are really just on the cusp of qualifying. They were almost certain to get in as well. Their next opportunity, though, will have to wait till September. They play Vite in Ecuador and Peru. And, of course, the Caps' next home match, 2 weeks from today, versus San Diego. That could very well be a number 1 versus number 2 in the MLS West. Get your tickets, whitecapsfc.com. BC Lions into Winnipeg today for tomorrow's big Week 2 game. Lions won in the Manitoba capital last June. Then they lost the following 2 games to the Bombers, including that embarrassing shutout in Winnipeg in August. Mount Winnipeg still exists, and now it's up to former Bombers offensive coordinator and, of course, new BC Lions head coach Buck Pierce to beat his old mates, unlock the formula to getting over Winnipeg, who have been best in the West for several years now. Lions have 5 linebackers out with injury in this game, including rookie Jeremy Lewis, who played his first CFL game Saturday. The good news is it is mostly backup special teams linebackers, Vernon's Ben Laddick, and Micah Awe. They're good to start. They'll get Canadian offensive lineman Tyler Packer back to serve as a reserve offensive lineman. They only dressed 6 offensive linemen last week, so have a little more cover at that position tomorrow as Week 2 in the Canadian Football League season gets going with the Lions and Bombers. The Vancouver Canadians are hotter than their parent club, and that is saying something because the Blue Jays are really going right now as well. C's winning a 5th straight game, and they are now won 13 of their last 15 on a sun-splashed evening at Nat Bailey Stadium. Want to thank Tom and PJ Farhan. We had a little social outing last night at the game. Mike, fantastic seats as well. C's beat Spokane 5-1. They've moved into a tie for first place in the Northwest League with 8 games remaining in the first half. Whoever wins the first half is guaranteed a spot in the championship series and with home field advantage. Once again, it was a Jays pitching prospect last night, Cal Steven, 6 scoreless. He struck out 9, couple of home runs from Carter Cunningham. Sean Keys, he needed to get off the schneid. They're back at it tonight and tomorrow night before a Fortis Friday nooner. And then Blue Jay Day Saturday at the Nat, a Davis Schneider bobblehead giveaway. Former Blue Jays World Series champions Todd Stottlemyre, Pat Borders, the World Series MVP in 1992, will be on hand. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. And mention the Jays. Another comeback win versus St. Louis yesterday. They've won 11 of 13. They haven't done that in 2 years. Alejandro Kirk scorching right now. He hits a home run. His average is up to 323. That's 6th best in the majors right now. And former Vancouver Canadian Will Robertson called up to the bigs today. The outfielder hoping to get into the game in St. Louis. As he's from nearby, he's going to have a lot of friends and family in attendance. So nice to see another Vancouver Canadian matriculate to the Jays in Major League Baseball. Our Toyota Pacific dealers poll question results from Tuesday. We asked you, how do you regard Brad Marchand? The options were rat, playoff hero, bit of both. You want to take a guess at what won the poll here?
I've already seen it's a bit of both.
Bit of both, 69%. Nice. Playoff hero got 17%. Rat, just 14%. Wow. The makeover of Brad Marchand continues. Wayward Son says, guy fucked us so much, but his style of play is too respectable. That's it. We were talking about that yesterday with Patrick Johnson and John Shannon. Like, at some point, he just becomes undeniable. And at some point, the calls of, I hate to play against him, but would love him on my team, get even louder. Basketball Phil says he is a rat 100%. This newfound maturity happened for him when he realized Zdeno Chara wasn't there to protect him all the time. Once a rat, always a rat. And then Jay says he's Remy from Ratatouille, awfully persistent and ridiculously skilled in his work environment, but he's still a rat. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. Colin in planning is calling Patrick Johnson out. PJ said there has not been a new ice rink built in the city of Vancouver in 50 years. Colin says, what about GM Place Rogers Arena? It was built in the 90s. Technically right. I mean, I think Patrick was obviously referring to public sheets of ice, which Rogers Arena is not, but it does qualify as a sheet of ice in the city of Vancouver. And Colin also notes that even if a rink is built at UBC, that wouldn't count. UBC not in the city of Vancouver. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us telling you about. And keep it local.